some other folks have come in, so that gives me a little bit of courage to lead this song that I didn't have the courage until they walked in to do. So let's try this one. It's a beautiful song. It does break up into girls answering the guys after the stanza two. We shall assemble on. If you'd like to go ahead and mark your songbooks, page 401. 401 will be our next song.
Good evening. This is Andy Grider speaking for the congregation. We welcome each of you to our evening worship service. We especially welcome our visitors and ask that you fill out a visitor's card located on the back of the pew. Others serving the worship tonight are Ron Gilbert, who's directing our singing. The opening prayer will be led by David. You care to have our opening prayer? And sorry, I did not do my homework. Dad, will you have the closing prayer tonight? Our speaker at the proper time will be Ron. No, it will not be Ron Gilbert. Wow, I did that. Man, Daniel will be giving us a presentation tonight. Sorry, Daniel. Other announcements. Let's remember February 7th will be an elders meeting at 5 p.m. February the 8th through the 11th will be the Freed Hardeman lectures. And remember, there's a sign-up sheet in the kitchen for the communion. And there's still a couple of months, October and December. So if you can do that, please sign up for that. Check the bulletin for a complete list of the congregation, and remember Helen Stewart, who is in room 355, Park Ridge, downtown. We will now have the opening prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this opportunity to assemble back here in this place to worship Thee, to hear the work that's going on around the world. We ask Thy blessing to fall on the family who represents Thy word. Be with them as they travel, and have a safe return. We pray for our sick and shut-ins,
401. Kind of felt sorry for Andy just a moment ago there. That camp song's got 2 more verses in it than we're used to, and bless his heart, he couldn't see the words. So, 401, this may be new to us. Jesus, blessed Jesus, hear us while we sing. Praise and adoration unto thee we bring. We are in the sunshine, sunshine of thy love. Daily we are climbing to our home above. Thou hast made our joys like little lights that glow. Flames so brightly burning everywhere we go. We are in the sunshine, sunshine of thy love. Daily we are climbing to our home above. Thou dost love us, Jesus, and we love thee too. We are daily trying in our will to do. We are in the sunshine, sunshine of thy love. Daily we are climbing to our home above. Our song encouragement, that one we sung will be 37, page 37. Okay.
Andy, you can call me Ron. It's okay. I've been called worse things than that. That's okay. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you for the next few minutes about the great work that's taking place in Tanzania. Appreciate so much this congregation serving as kind of a home away from home for us during a lot of this time, especially this year. But just as a reminder of what we're doing, I expect that most of you are fairly familiar with our work, but the work of the church is to go into all the world, make disciples of all nations. That's what we're trying to do. We try to fulfill that commission right here in South Pittsburgh. We try to fulfill that commission all across the globe. And with your help and the help of others like you, and my family is trying to fulfill that commission in the nation of Tanzania. And just as a reminder of our mission model, there's 4 aspects to the mission. First, of course, is evangelism, seeking and saving the lost, helping bring lost souls to Christ and restore their relationships with their Lord. And then as another part of that is edification. We want our job doesn't end at baptism. We're also supposed to continue to teach them to observe all that Jesus has commanded, right? And so another part of fulfilling that Great Commission is not just to get the baptisms, but also to try to help those new Christians develop the roots that they need and help those churches to be well established and to grow and to endure into the future. And so that's a lot of what we do as well. And then, of course, there's benevolence. We have the opportunity to alleviate what suffering we can. The loving and Christ-like thing to do is to do that. We can't solve the problem of poverty, but we can make the difference in the lives of some people. And with your help and the help of others like you, and we've been able to offer food and shelter and clothing and medical care and educational opportunities and other very needed things to some very needy individuals. And that has made a difference in their lives, and they appreciate that so very much. But the main aspect of our work is in preacher training, and following the model that Paul laid out to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, where he said, "And the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." And this idea of preacher training is one of the things that drew me to this work to begin with, because there's an amplified good that comes from that, because all the men that we train and leave behind are there doing the work of an evangelist for the rest of their lives. And they'll do a tremendous amount of good, more than any single missionary could by themselves. And you'll see a little bit more of that as we go along. So those are the aspects of our mission. And so what I want to do now is we'll go through some of the highlights of the year. Here's our setting. Of course, we're in Tanzania, the 26th most populous nation in the world, home to about 50 million people. Those 50 million people comprise a young population. 65% of the population is under the age of 24 years old. And 95% of the population is under the age of 54 years old. So it's a young population. You do encounter elderly Tanzanians, but they're few and far between. And most of that is just because of life expectancy. They don't have the health care and other things that you need to experience a long life. Accurate religious statistics are hard to gather, but anecdotally, I would suggest that it's roughly half Islamic and half would claim to be Christian. But that, to this point, has not caused a lot of conflict within Tanzania itself. In Kenya, to our north, there have been some issues here and there, but for the most part, Tanzania has been pretty peaceable. Hopefully, that continues into the future. It's a volatile world that we live in, but I don't feel people always ask about terrorism. I don't feel in any really greater danger from terrorists in Tanzania than I do here. And there's plenty of targets that happen here in America as well. Bad things could happen there, but bad things could happen here too. It's the world that we live in today. Swahili, of course, is the language that is spoken there. As a sample of what that sounds like, habari za jioni, Bwana Yesu asifiwe, Mungu ni mwema kila siku, which means good evening, praise the Lord Jesus, God is good every day. And so that's a phrase I often use to open the sermons with over there. For size comparison, here is what it would look like if we took Tanzania and placed it on top of the southeast United States. A lot of times it helps you to get a better sense of a place when you compare it to areas that you're already familiar with. So you can see it's a fairly sizable country. And of course, we're located in the northern city of Arusha, or just outside of Arusha. Just outside of town, even today in 2016, you can find people living in this primitive type of lifestyle with mud huts and grass roofs and all that sort of thing. A couple of times a week, they're going to go into the nearest village to go to market, to sell their wares and buy goods that they need. This is the Kisongo market. It's near to the school of preaching where I work. They will get around by any means necessary. It may mean riding on the back of a truck. It may mean hanging off the side of a dala. That's what that van is there in the lower right-hand corner. That's public transportation there. They call it a dala. For a quarter, you can ride across town. And if there's not people hanging off the side, then it's not full. There's still room, so hop on. You can do that. Or they'll carry whatever you want, too. We see they'll open up the back, and a goat will get out. And they're not very discriminating about that sort of thing. Or you can walk. If you have a load to carry it on your head, keeps the weight centered over your spinal column, and leaves your hands free. So these baskets are African hands-free devices. Or you can rent a piki motorcycle. And this is, it's not a motorcycle gang. These are just taxi drivers. They're hanging out, waiting for somebody that needs a ride. And for about $1, they'll take you where you want to go specifically if you need to go somewhere off of the dollar route. Like, for example, if you had gone to a market and you bought a living room suit, well, you need a way to take it home. So you strap it to the back of a motorcycle and off you go. And if that's all too dangerous, your family can buy a casket right on the side of the road. These were empty, I think. I didn't check. Power outages are a big part of life there. It's not uncommon at all for the power to be out 12 hours a day or more. That's a great annoyance to us, but it's a part of life for them. This is my daughter Abby reading to her brothers during one of those power outages. It takes the average Tanzanian 8 years to use the same amount of electricity that the average American does in 1 month. And some of that has to do with American excess, and some of that has to do with their power grid, their power availability, and the things they have that use power. Anyway, that's their life. This is our road. Just showing you why a four-wheel drive vehicle is a necessity. Sometimes you just have to wait for the cows to move out of the way, and pretty much every day. That's a part of it. Now that's enough about the setting. Let's get to some highlights of the year and see how we've been at work. Let's start with going home from furlough last year. This is again what we'll experience tomorrow because this is our last night. We're going back in the morning, but this is what it takes. It takes 10 suitcases, 5 carry-ons, 5 personal items, and a stroller, as we took last year, to get a family of 5 to Africa. And so we're like a comedy movie trying to get through the airport. You know, it's challenging sometimes. We even built a fort with our bags to keep Levi contained. May have to do that again tomorrow. And then once we got there, this year ended up being kind of a lonely walk for me in a lot of ways. We got there, and our team, there were 2 families there when I left. Because of medical necessity, one of them came back permanently, and because of a change in his family situation, another one had to come back and was planning to do a kind of a half and half, 6 months here and 6 months there type of deal. Since that time, he's encountered some extremely serious health problems and would appreciate your prayers for Cy Stafford. He's the one that founded this work. He's my mentor and very good friend, and he is in an extremely critical situation at UAB right now. But anyway, so I spent, when we got back, and there were no other American missionaries that were there. And then we had the situation with Josiah happen a couple months after that, and he had to come back here for evaluation and treatment and so forth. And so Tiffany had to travel across the globe with 3 children by herself and go through that process. And so I spent, all in all, about 5 months last year in Africa alone, as far as alone from other Americans that were a part of our team. But, of course, I wasn't all alone. I had my trusty faculty at the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching. That's Charles, Godfrey, Ahimadiwe, and Michael. And a big part, I was the director of the School of Preaching this year, and a big part of my work was training 2 of these men, Charles and Ahimadiwe, to take over as co-directors for the school. And so we're handing day-to-day operation of the school over to local leaders. And that's a big step in the work, and we're excited about that step. And there's still going to be American involvement, but to be able to hand over that day-to-day operation is a milestone in the growth of a work like this, and is very important. There's my view as I'm teaching class. We had 12 English students last year and 15 Swahili students. This year we started an organized student outreach program where we sent students out in pairs to area congregations where they would attend services there and be available to help in any way needed, teaching or leading singing or whatever. And then 2 Saturdays a month they would go to those churches, to the areas of those congregations, and do personal evangelism. And that was a great experience for them. It helped the area churches. It built the relationship between the congregations and the school. It was just win-win-win all the way around. And here are some statistics from, this is just a 4-month period while they were students at school doing this on 2 Saturdays a month. And here's what is reported from that. They had 310 Bible studies. Now, here's how they would count a Bible study. All right, if I go and I have a study with a group of 3 people, and then next week I come back and I study with those same 3 people, and next week I study with those same 3 people, that all counts as one study. All right, so they count it as individual, unique groups of people that they're studying with. And so 310 unique groups of people that they study with. They signed up 299 people for Bible correspondence courses, 47 baptisms, and 51 members of the church who were wayward were restored. And so that gives you a sampling of what they're doing during their school time. and I can't wait to see what all they're going to do afterwards. And to give you an idea for the kind of the caliber of student we have, the men that are coming. This is a man named Jeremiah, and he runs this orphanage, a children's home in Karate. In addition to taking care of orphans there, they also train underprivileged individuals in the community in sewing and other craft type of things where they can make a living for themselves. And so he's helping his society, his community in a lot of ways, and now he's training to be a gospel preacher on top of all that. This is our class of 2015. These 15 men, join 137 alumni that we already have working in the Lord's Vineyard. These 137 alumni last year alone were part of 50 new church plants. And so when I talk about this exponential good that comes from preacher training, there's not many missionaries working alone who can plant 50 churches in a year. But you get a pyramid of men that have been trained and training other men and so forth, and things really can start growing, and a real generational type of difference can be made. I also had the chance to go up to the Kenya School of Preaching about 4 or 5 years ago. One of our graduates from Andrew Connolly saw a need for a school of preaching in Kenya that was like ours, and so he started one. We helped him as much as we could, but I was thrilled to go up there and see he had 20 quality students there that were training to be gospel preachers. And so here, this is kind of a daughter institution. So a second generation here of preacher training coming from one of the men that we trained. And so there again, you see this pyramid of good that's growing and taking place. And that's why I emphasize so heavily that preacher training is vital to the work of the church. And so, all four of those aspects of the mission, evangelism, edification, benevolence, and preacher training, these are things that the church needs to be concerned about everywhere. This is the church's business, these things. These things are necessary to continuing the work of the church, continuing the life of the church, and the health of the church in any given area. And so that's important here. It's important in Africa. It's important in Asia. It's important in India, wherever. I know India's in Asia, but more specific. That's just part of the work of the church. We also had the opportunity to host a lot of campaigns through the year. We'll have over 100 campaigners come at different times and take part in campaigns at different area congregations. These pictures are from the Manyeri congregation, and we deal with a lot of the same issues that you deal with in Bible studies here. Come up there, same doctrinal type stuff for the most part, but there are some things that are different. Like, here's some things that I've had to deal with in real serious conversations, serious studies. Is it okay to have multiple wives? So polygamy. No, you can't do that. Okay, fine. Well, if I can't have multiple wives, then can I just keep the youngest one? No, you can't do that. You got to go back and keep the first one. Well, can I correct my wife by hitting her? No, you can't do that. Yeah, but what if? Real question. What if she brings me cold coffee? Well, that's different altogether, right? We're talking about coffee now. This is serious. No, you still can't do that, even under those extreme circumstances. Well, what if I'm going to get baptized and I get eaten by a crocodile? Been asked that. You ever get asked that around here? That hadn't come up. I don't know why. But it's a real problem. I know. I was talking with a man just a couple of weeks before I came back to the States who was telling me about his cousin that sat on what she thought was a rock. It wasn't a rock. It was a crocodile, and it ate her. So this really, really happens. Will you cast a demon out of my mother-in-law? So that's different things that you have to deal with. here's a common setting for personal Bible studies. We sat on a bucket under this tree, studied with this man. It was just outside his house. There were some baboons on that hill, just on the edge of the picture there, that were watching us. There was, coming from inside his house, from a battery-operated radio, I assume, was the musical stylings of Celine Dion and Mariah Carey. And so, they live in this really bizarre mixture of modern and ancient is the world they live in. And it's hard to really understand without being immersed in it. There's so much that is behind the times, but on the other hand, they get to skip some steps too, because they're relying on largely technology that's being brought in from other parts of the world, like phones, for instance. It's not uncommon to see somebody that lives in a grass hut with a cell phone, and that doesn't seem to fit in our minds, right? That we don't understand that. But think about it like this: if you're going into a place and you're going to set up phone service, and there's no infrastructure already there, does it make more sense to go slap up a cell tower or to run lines all over the place? It's just more cost efficient, more efficient in general to set up cell towers. And so they have cell service that's pretty affordable, pretty cheap over there, and it's widespread. But they also have deep poverty in other ways, and so it's just a weird mix that we have to deal with. On one campaign, we went out to the Ngordoto congregation here on the remote spot on the side of Mount Meru. I got lost on the way because I'd never been there, so I picked up a guide, and he wasn't a great guide. We got pretty lost. We were driving down footpaths. We drove through herds of animals, across creeks, and all this kind of thing. Finally, we get to this congregation, and we're an hour and 45 minutes late. Now, Ron, if you showed up an hour and 45 minutes late to church, what do you expect to find? And nobody's here, right? There was not an empty seat. If anybody left, it was somebody that had been standing. But there was not an empty seat when we got there. They were just in there singing and waiting on us. And I thought, well, probably we'll have an abbreviated service since we're so late. No, they put in a full 3-hour church service like they normally do. And, they weren't going to shortchange God any of his time just because we had been so late. And that's part of their culture, is they're an event-oriented culture rather than a time-oriented culture. And so however much time an event needs to be successful, that's what it gets, and then they move on to the next event on their schedule. And that's really good in some ways and really frustrating in other ways, depending on what's going on. But that's just part of the culture there, and I appreciate it when it comes to church services. Also, while I was there, I had the opportunity to wait on the Lord's table, and as I was passing around the collection basket, it's important for even impoverished people to be taught to give. It's part of our worship. It's part of being more like God, because God is a giver, and as we are becoming like God, we also want to be givers. Well, anyway, there was this one lady that evidently didn't have any money that she could give, but she wanted to give to God. And so I watched as she carefully placed 2 eggs in the collection basket that she had gathered that morning from her chickens. And that touched me. I felt like I just witnessed the widow's mites there in person. And her 2 eggs, I think, was a very great contribution. Something else we've been doing this year is a rotating seminar on spiritual disciplines, where I do the first lesson in the seminar. I go to, on the first Sunday of each month, I go to a different congregation and I introduce the seminar. And then for the 12 weeks after me, different preachers from different congregations in the area come to that congregation and present the subsequent lessons. And so it has, it's a good seminar, but it also builds community among the area congregations, and that they're working together. They're exposed to the different evangelists and help get to know each other better. And so it takes a little over a year for that to rotate around through 13 different congregations. But it's been a good thing. Notice also the seating. No padded pews there. Sometimes we get a wooden bench with a back. Sometimes there's no back, and sometimes it's a plastic chair. Now, these are the only 3 types of seating that I have seen in a church building there. So that's it. Something else we do is we host the Tanzania Leadership Conference, which is kind of a lectureship type of thing. And there's not a lot like that taking place over there, and so it's a big deal. We had people come from America and Tanzania, but also Kenya and Uganda and Malawi and Cambodia were all represented there at our conference. And the highlight of the conference to me was in our Sunday morning worship services. This man came forward, and he was a man that had been struggling with alcohol. Alcohol had wrecked his life in many ways. It led him to steal from his family repeatedly. He lost multiple jobs as a result of that, and burned so many bridges. And the church took it seriously. And going through the process of church discipline, they eventually withdrew fellowship from him. And it made a difference. He responded to that, and he went through a treatment program and cleaned up. And this took place in October of last year. He's still sober and clean and productive the last I heard today. And so, that's an inspirational story, I think, about him, but also a reminder about church discipline, and that God's instructions, even if they sometimes seem counterintuitive to us, or sometimes we may not really like the way He is instructing us to do something, if we will obey His ways and His instructions, then God knows what He's doing. He knows it better than we do. And so I like to offer that success story. This is the Njirocini congregation. It's where we go to church regularly. It's a new congregation. It's only 2 years old now. For the first 2 years of its existence, it met in one of the members' houses. But here just recently, they were able to get this tent situation set up at an independent location, and they're very excited about it. And so I wanted to share that with you as that baby congregation is growing and taking its steps. Another aspect of the work is we're developing is our farm project. And the reason we're doing this, we have an acre of land that is set up for drip irrigation. We also have some chickens. We have 3 or 4 cows now. We're looking to expand the chicken section of the project and to get into raising some pigs as well. And the reasons that we do this are multiple. One is to feed ourselves. We can offset the expenses that it takes to feed the students and provide that food for ourselves, then that cuts cost. And then whatever we can produce beyond what the school needs and sell, well, that makes the school that much more independent. And that's less funds that have to be raised from foreign sources and that kind of thing, and is good for the sustainability of the school. And then thirdly, it helps with teaching the students a tent making trade. Some of the students wind up gaining foreign support, which is great when that happens. But a lot of them are not going to be supported ministers. They're going to be working at small congregations that can't really pay them what they need to have a sustainable lifestyle. And so if they have a skill like this, it helps them to feed their family while they are doing the work of an evangelist. It helps with their longevity and helps them to be able to continue on doing the work that they need to do. And also, we occasionally host drip irrigation seminars to help the community as a goodwill type of thing, and help those around us to be able to feed themselves better as well. I want to take a moment to mention that when I talk to you about these things that are taking place, don't feel like I'm telling you what we're doing over there as far as my family, or what they're doing over there as far as the Africans. I'm telling you what we are doing as a team, as the body of Christ. We're connected. We're interconnected. There's no such thing as the American church and the African church. It is the church, the body of Christ, right? And so when we work together, when you give sacrificially to the church and to mission efforts, then that makes these things possible. When you remember missionaries in your prayers on a regular basis, that's important, and that makes you a part of this process. And so we're fellow workers, we're teammates together. Not everybody can or should go and live in a foreign field and be a missionary in that regard, but everybody should take part in mission work in terms of supporting it through your prayers or financially, whatever way that you can. And then here, as we get close to the end here, I want to try to take you through. Some people wonder about a day in our lives, and I selected this day because I think it's going to give a good balance of some work things that happen and also some recreation that takes place. Here we were taking the spiritual discipline seminar to the the Mosquito River congregation, Umtawawumbu. And there, this is their church building. While we were there, Tiffany taught the children's class. At one point, the kids were distracted by a mongoose that was outside, and Satan came to visit also, or at least a snake did. And meanwhile, I taught the auditorium class and preached as well. And this congregation has a significant Maasai population, and so everything had to be translated twice. The man standing right beside me was translating my English words into Swahili. But a lot of the Maasai don't even speak Swahili. They speak Maasai. And so the man to the far right there, or far left of the screen, is translating those Swahili words into Maasai. So, everything at that congregation had to be translated twice, and made the process interesting, and hopefully, things went through the way they needed to. Joyfully, a woman decided to respond and wanted to be baptized that day. Well, the baptistry had to be filled by a bucket brigade, and that took about an hour. And so after services, the kids played together, and we visited and waited and helped out how we could. And we get the opportunity to see scenes like this, kids playing together, different colors, different language, different culture, but made in the image of the same God. And that means a lot. The woman then eventually was able to put on her Lord in baptism, enjoyed having her sins washed away. The preacher fed us lunch in his home. This is a common meal of palau and vegetables. The palau is that rice dish that you see there. And while we were in Umtawawumbu, we picked up some of their famous red bananas. There's nothing wrong with the color there, I don't guess, but those bananas are supposed to look red. And they do taste just a little different, a little bit sweeter. And so if you're ever in Umtawawumbu, stop by and pick up some red bananas. You'll be glad you did. Umtawawumbu is also very close to a national park, and so we thought we'd take the kids on an afternoon drive through the park and let them see a few of the animals. And so we enjoyed that. There I am, hanging out with my friend the elephant just outside my truck window. And we stopped, had us a little, not a full picnic, but a little snack, ate our bananas and that kind of thing. And when we were done, we get back in the truck and, well, it won't start. So we're thinking, we're in this national park, and there's, lions roaming around this thing freely, and hyenas and various other, animals that you don't mind seeing outside your truck, but you don't really want to be out there with them. Anyway, So we're trying to figure out what to do. And we don't have anybody we can call. There's no AAA or anything like that. So we finally get a hold of a worker that's there in the picnic area. We think maybe he's got a radio or something, but he doesn't. And he says, "Well, why don't you push start it?" We have even better ideas. So here we go. We're gonna try to push start this thing down this hill, and so right, like you might expect, it doesn't work. So we're down at the bottom of the hill, away from the relative safety of the picnic site, trying to figure out what to do. And eventually we flag down this safari truck and ask them to jump us off. Maybe that's the problem. Well, it doesn't work. We just can't figure it out. What are we going to do here? Well, finally we realized that the key had been broken. I was driving around with just the metal part of the key. I had been for a few days. But for some reason, didn't realize until on this day, I guess I kept the fob in my pocket on this occasion, that there was a chip in the fob. It was a theft safety type of deal. And so I just had to hold it in my hand while I was twisting the little metal part, and it started right up, and we were on our way. So, we were frustrated we wasted so much time over something so simple, but on the other hand, relieved that it was nothing significant, and that was that. So that was just a day in our life. 53% of Tanzania's population has access to improved water sources. That means there's some kind of pump put in, some kind of mechanism, piping. They're in some way they have improved the water source to get it more readily to the people. That means the remaining 47% of Tanzania's population is getting their water like this, or something like this, where they're taking buckets and going to a water hole somewhere, going to a village well, and gathering their daily water needs, which is it's next to air. Water is our second most vital life need. You got to have it. And whenever I see this, I can't help but be reminded of Jesus' interaction with the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, as she was performing this very task of going to get her daily water needs. And she has this encounter with Jesus, and you know it well, but Jesus offers her living water. And she's confused by that. This living water is supposed to take care of your thirst forever. And she's thinking, well, I could avoid this task of having to go and draw this water every day. That's time consuming. That's hard work. Well, I could do a lot of other things with the time that it takes to do this. But she doesn't understand that Jesus is offering her something even better than that. Jesus is offering her eternal life, really. He's offering her what she needs most in the world. And that's not an easier supply of water from Jacob's well. Even though 47% of Tanzanians are getting their water like this, and even though here in America we have clean, drinkable water in such abundance that we bathe in it, we flush it down our toilets, we still have the same primary need that they do. You need the living water that Jesus provides. They need the living water that Jesus provides. That's something we have in common, and that is our most desperate need. And we cannot live without it eternally. We will spiritually die if we don't have access to that living water. Now, I feel very confident that if you're here tonight and you'd like to study more about how to restore your relationship with God and gain that living water, that Brother Ron would just be too tickled to sit down and have a nice long conversation with you about that. I expect most of you here know God's plan of salvation. You know that upon hearing the gospel message taught that you have the responsibility to respond to that. You know that you have to believe it or disbelieve it. There's going to be consequences for either decision. And if you believe it, you're going to have to act on that belief and change your life. That's what we call repentance. It's not just, repentance is not just feeling sorry. It's not just saying, I'm sorry. But there's a change involved in that. A change based on that belief that you have. And then you're also going to need to confess that belief. You're not going to keep that a secret. You're going to share that. And then you're going to put on your Lord in baptism through that watery grave. And here, we don't even have to use a bucket brigade, right? That's we can get this thing ready a whole lot quicker than they did at Umtrowumbu. So if there's somebody here tonight that needs to take advantage of this opportunity to be baptized, now's a great time to do that. Or if you need to ask for prayers to strengthen you, or you need to respond in some other way, that invitation is yours. Come forward and let your need be known, while together we stand and sing.